Tic Talk, Tic Talk, Tic Talk, Talk.
A real Celtic talk show by real Celtic fans from the Carluke Shamrock Supporters Club on Hail Hail Media.
Tic Talk, Tic Talk, Tic Talk, 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 Talk.
Hail Hail and welcome to Tic Talk with the Carluke Shamrock Celtic Supporters Club. You can find more information about the club at carlukeshamrock.com, and you can find more info about the podcasts and all the other Celtic family podcasts at hailhailmedia.com. My name is Richard, and this session has been put together with recordings that were made on Monday the 10th of September 2012. Now, just a couple of disclaimers and explainers. This is another special edition episode of Tic Talk that we've put together. So it's not our normal panel talk show that we do. This is an outside broadcast where two of our intrepid reporters, Brian and Vincent, they headed through to Edinburgh for us, and they recorded an event at the Scottish Civil Service Celtic Supporters Club, and it was a media question time that those guys put together through there. So thanks first of all to Brian and Vincent for doing that. They took the time and effort to head out there. They actually managed to grab some of the panel members and interview them beforehand. They then also recorded the main piece, and they've done that so that we can put this together and share it out to the wider Celtic family, so they can hear the event that they wouldn't have been able to go to otherwise. So while it is thanks to our guys that we've got in the podcast, all kind of credit and recognition should go towards the Scottish Civil Service CSC and Iain Monk, their president, who arranged it all. So it's those guys who have put together the panel, put together the questions and so on, and the kind of credit and recognition is towards those guys. Now, the first disclaimer, just about the audio quality. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it works out okay for the majority of our listeners. Some of you may find that you want to pop headphones on just to really make out all of the the answers and the questions from the guys. While our two guys have done great recording everything and trying to get around all the different people, the hall itself that they were in, there's no microphones, there's no speaker system, it's just a panel at the front, and then of course all the different members seated around them, so quite a difficult environment to try and record, but we've done that, brought it back, edited it, removed a lot of the noise, background information, etc., and tried to clean it up and boost it as much as we possibly can, so that it is recognisable at least for you guys to listen into. Second disclaimer, on a bit of a humorous note, when Brian was interviewing Jane Lewis, he did make mention to the fact that they had a relationship that went back 10 years or so. Apparently it was all fine and above board and involved them bumping into each other during a Celtic match in Stuttgart, I think it was. So if Jane Lewis's husband ever listens to this, let me make it categorically clear that it was a completely platonic relationship and nothing beyond that whatsoever. Just wanted to make that clear for the TikTok lawyers. Next thing up, a wee explanation. Apparently, during the question time, there was a very large section of discussion around the Scottish national team and Scottish football at a kind of higher generic level. Now, we're conscious of the fact that the majority of our listeners are very focused on the Celtic element and, just really want to hear about that, whereas there are some listeners who will just listen to anything and, want to hear all the ins and outs of things. So we've catered for both of those. What we've done is we've extracted that long Scotland piece out and placed it at the very end of the podcast. So if you now listen to it, you'll hear the guys setting things up, you'll hear the different interviews, you'll then hear all the various questions from the hall to the panel. That will go through to the end where our two guys will wind things up. And if that's all you're interested in, that's cool. But after they talk and kind of wind up the event as far as that's concerned, you'll then have the last part of the podcast will show the recording of the questions and the discussion around the Scottish national team and the manager and the set-up, etc, etc. So if you fancy that, then by all means listen on. Hopefully that makes sense. And finally, one more disclaimer before I hand you over to these two intrepid reporters. Oh my God. This is what happens when I'm not there to keep an eye on things. You know, to crack the whip, make sure we've got quality in mind, etc. The key phrase for this disclaimer is tea and scones. I'm about to hand you over to the intrepid reporters, Brian and Vincent, who are nestling down in comfy chairs like a couple of old ladies in a very posh Edinburgh hotel where they're about to be served tea and scones, which takes up a bit of their discussion before and after the event. For that, I can only apologise, and I do promise that I will be on hand and keeping an eye on these people in future events. So, over to the guys.
Tic Talk, 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 talk.
Hail, hail, and welcome to Tic Talk. This is BJ Mac, and
Vincenzo, sir.
in the Apex Hotel, salubrious surroundings, Waterloo Place, Edinburgh, and we're here for the Scottish Civil Service Celtic Supporters Club annual question and answer session with, on the panel we have tonight, Chris McLaughlin, who I understand is chairing it, Jane Lewis, Hugh MacDonald and Tom English, and Vincent and myself are just sitting here with a cup of tea, just awaiting our scones.
Scones are coming, that's lovely. I think we've really took Tic Talk up market actually, and I can see you holding your
pinky.
I can see you holding your pinky up there when you're drinking your tea.
Oh dear.
So we've took it up market. So this is a contact of mine, Iain Monk, who obviously works in the Scottish Civil Service, and he kicked off the Celtic Supporters Association within the service. I think he's did about maybe 6, and I've been to about 3 or 4 of them.
Aye.
The first one was here in Edinburgh, and it was the heavyweights. It
And
was,
last year you recorded.
That's right, yeah. So the first one was Trainer and guys like that.
Not my favourite
yes.
guy in the world.
And we've had Spears. We've actually had Hugh MacDonald before, and Tom English. Jane Lewis is new.
Aye.
So I haven't spoke to her before. So
Hopefully
he keeps me
we
on.
get to catch her later.
Yes.
Aye.
He keeps me on the circulation list, so I get an invite to these, and he has maybe 2 or 3 a year. So the last one was really good. Richard recorded the last one, and it was really quite good. So I'm really looking forward to it. They're good nights.
I'm looking forward to it myself. There's a number of subjects to cover tonight, and we don't want to go in too deep into each of them now, but I mean, just as a summary, we've got the Champions League to look forward to. We've got our own league without Rangers, who went out of business.
Hi there, thank you.
Thanks very much. It's the scones are
Scones
arriving.
are arriving.
The scones are arriving. Yeah, that's it. Oh man, you look like belters.
Do you need a top up there in your tea?
No,
Okay.
I'm
You're
quite fine, Vincent. Thanks very much.
Just give me a wee shout. I'll get the guy. I'll
You
get the
start.
guy to do it. I'm not doing it. The guy will come and do it for you.
I was a bit disappointed that he didn't stir it for it for us, but there you go. So we've got the Champions League, we've got the league, which is entirely different this year. We've got what's happening generally in Scottish football with Sevco, or I'm not quite sure what they're called this week. So a number of subjects. So I think it'll be quite an interesting evening.
Aye.
What's your question going to be about?
Hopefully, if asked, he asked to put out for more questions today. So if asked, I'm going to ask a Champions League question. I usually ask the Rangers question and the media question. So I've actually,
You've given that to
given
me.
I've given you that one actually. So I wanted to go with a kind of more rounded general question about the Champions League. So we might not get to ask it.
Aye.
It kind of depends how Ian emailed today and just asked for some more questions. So. I think this is the first time. This is the first time you did a double-hander for the same thing, eh? So you're going to be recording the panel, and I'm hopefully going to be in the crowd recording the questions, so it's a bit easier. And somehow,
Hopefully it works.
Richard will stitch that together or something. You know, he's
Hopefully
like,
it works,
it's
but
pretty good.
really looking forward to it. Hopefully we'll manage to get a couple of words with maybe some of the panel as well. I'm going to try and grab Jane Lewis.
All right, are you going to have a word there or just grab her?
Just grab her.
All right, that's fine.
There's a wee bit of history there, but we'll wait and see if that comes up. You might find out about that later, boys. But we'll see you, to use Eddie Pearson's, we'll see you at our side.
See you on the other side, yeah. Hail, hail.
Hail, hail.
Tick tock, 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 tock.
It's BJ Mack here, again at the Civil Service Celtic Supporters Club Q&A night through in the Salisbury surroundings of Apex Hotel in Edinburgh, and with me I've got Iain Monk of the Supporters Club. Iain, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do with the club and what tonight's all about.
Well, I'm the president of the club. Tonight's an opportunity for members to come together, talk about all things Celtic, to laugh at Rangers, to moan about Craig Levein, and basically to hurl abuse, friendly abuse at Tom English and all the other, on behalf of all the internet bampots out there.
Yes.
We're going to give it tight to these journalists tonight.
And you've got a great panel there. How do you go about is it just the reputation of the association? Is it your reputation? Or how do you go about securing these guys?
I think we've built up a reputation over the last 4 years. It's a relatively young club, but it's becoming a very big club. We've got over 400 members now. But the reason the journalists came along is because we bribed them and we offered them hard cash. No, but it's fantastic. We get them because Jane and Richard Wilson are newbies. They haven't been before, but Tom English, Chris, we've had people like Hugh Keevans, who is loved by all Celtic fans, of course.
Jim Traynor,
he's
I'm just so glad he's
not fantastic. Here. Bosom pals. But they come back and they offer us something really special, and it's this isn't Radio Clyde Super Scoreboard. It's a notch above that.
Okay.
Intelligent debate, and we give them chocolate brownies at the end and send them home, and they're chuffed.
Good stuff, and it's good. And I just see Big Mark Kingsman come in there, Kingo of the Cano Foundation. I assume he's a member of your.
Yeah, he's a member.
We'll get a word with him later.
He's just a relatively new member, but we've actually got a Dundee fan here as well. I don't know how he got in, but we've got the delousing powder, so we'll.
So, Iain, tell me this. There's been a few guys asking what you look like, and as soon as I met you, I thought there's a look of Jim White about you. Has anyone ever said this to you before? No. Is that the biggest insult you've had in a podcast?
That is without doubt the biggest, and I'm actually quite shocked by that. Jim White, come on, guys!
I was half expecting you to say, and we're going over to White Hart Lane to Harry Redknapp in the car park.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I could do that later, but Jim White, come on!
I have to say, you're a slightly better looking version of Jim White, but there is a Jim White look.
Look, you've dug the grave, man. Come on, you're just backpedaling now. Well, I mean, we might get some video footage next time. It's obviously let's just keep it to the podcast.
We're going to be on YouTube soon, and we've already done a bit of video, so
great.
Look out for that.
Absolutely.
Maybe next year it'll be video rather than.
But can I just say it's fantastic. Carluke Celtic Supporters Club has been a fantastic supporter of what we've done. These podcasts are fantastic, and they're aired, and people from all over the world can listen to it. And I just hope that. We add to what your club is doing.
And of course you do. And I think it would, last year when we recorded it, it was just at the infancy of the whole Hail Hail Media, which is a group of podcasts that Richard's heavily involved in. And the response we got from this event that we recorded last year was just phenomenal. And from worldwide, as you mentioned, from all over the countries. We get a map of where these podcasts are downloaded from, and you wouldn't believe some of the places. I'm sure Borat's downloaded their version.
It's great, and it's an opportunity for supporters to hear, intelligent debate about their club, and that's all we want to see. We want to see people talking about intelligently about Celtic and the state of Scottish football in general. And also to have fun, and we've got a decent crowd tonight, and we're at the Apex Hotel in Edinburgh, and they're taking care of us, so we're looking forward to it.
Great, and I know you're a busy man tonight, and thanks very much for your time.
My pleasure.
And I really look forward to the night.
Thank you very much.
Tick tock, 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 tock.
This is Brian from Tic Talk, and we've got with us tonight at Civil Service CSC, Jane Lewis from, I don't know if it's BBC or ITV or Sky.
Well, I'm a freelance journalist now, so I work with anyone and anyone, pay the bills.
Anyone who pays the money.
Exactly, yeah.
So straight into it, Jane, who do you support?
Right, I support Motherwell. Because, everyone says, no, it's not a cop-out, it's the truth. I was born in Motherwell, born on Abels Road, and to be honest with you, I moved away from Scotland all through my childhood and kind of kept coming back and what have you, so, they're the team that I always have a special place in my heart for, so I always say I'm a Motherwell fan.
And did you go to the games growing up?
Well, that's what I'm saying, I didn't really, because I moved around a lot when I was growing up. My dad worked for British Steel, but he worked overseas, so we lived in some fairly exciting places, I have to be honest, and so I wasn't around in Scotland when I was growing up for a great length of my childhood, so I didn't go to as many games as I should have done or would have wanted to have done.
And this is an unusual, if you don't mind me saying, an unusual profession, and there's not many females in this profession, so how did you get into it?
Yeah, well, I mean, do you know, I think there are more females certainly now than when you kind of look back through the years.
You're one of the kind of groundbreakers.
Yeah, well,
Hazel Irvine,
thank you for saying that. Yeah, I mean, well, I see Hazel as one of my role models. Actually, I look up to her. When I was at school, I was seeing her on the telly, and her, she was getting into talking about football and broadcasting and stuff, and so she was a real role model for me. Her and Eleanor Oldroyd as well. They were the two that I kind of most looked up to, and they probably made it a lot easier for me to kind of break into this world. But certainly, yeah, there are more of us around than there used to be, but certainly not as many as there should be. So come on, girls, come out there fighting and get your...
I was going to ask this question. I'll maybe ask it.
No, in case I walk away or something.
No, we'll go for it.
Come on.
So there's a lot of guys in the industry, as you know. There's guys that do different things to get on. So like Peter Martin changed his name from Peter Maguire to get on in the industry.
Yeah.
What have you done to take it on and to be successful in this industry?
You expect me to answer that question?
Oh, of course. Come on, Jane.
It's not what you would think. No, I mean, I think. Listen, I think there are, as I said before, that there are more women getting into it now, and I don't think it's a surprise anymore when managers and footballers turn up at a press conference or after a game, and there are women there asking questions. It's not a big deal anymore, and I think certainly, even as far away as 10, 15 years ago, it was probably a lot more commonplace than people maybe would think. So I haven't done anything to go on. I've just worked hard, kept my head down, kept my nose clean. No, I've just hard work.
I need to let our listeners know that you and I have had a long relationship going on for about 10 years.
That's right,
now.
I know.
From that night in Stuttgart in the Hilton Hotel.
Was it? I'm glad you told me it was the Hilton.
What a memorable night it was.
And you might have to fill me in.
As soon as I walked in, no, I'm not even going to say the joke there. But probably this is a Celtic night, Celtic supporters, and I know you're obviously already told us about Motherwell, and that's kind of the team in your heart, but you must have the job that you do, and you're very fortunate to meet a lot of great football people. Have you got any anecdotes, any memorable stories about Celtic players or managers or any specific games?
Do you know, I was fortunate enough when I used to work with STV. It was in the times when STV actually had a wee bit of money, and they used to send the reporters out to follow, Celtic, Rangers, Scotland abroad. So I got to travel with Celtic when they went on the road to Seville, which was just fantastic. That's where we met, and I think one of my career highlights to this day is covering Celtic and Seville. The whole build-up I'm talking about. I was there, I think maybe about 5 days before we went out with the team, because they were singing Jerez, but 5 days before, and just the whole build-up. The fans starting to trickle in, and then all of a sudden they were all there, and the team obviously going to Seville as well and going to the press conferences, and we were working kind of 16-hour days, but it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and it was just great to be involved in that, and that was a Scottish success. That was a team going all the way to the UEFA Cup final, and fortunate enough, as I say, I got to kind of cover it firsthand, and it was just brilliant.
And
really,
it didn't
really
let us
brilliant.
down, the performance of both the fans and the team.
I think 80,000 Celtic fans were there, or was it 180,000? No, you're right. I mean, and it was really interesting, because I was there before the kind of the kind of mentalness took over, if you like. And it was great to see the dribs and drabs, the Celtic fans turning up, and you got to kind of see a bit of the colour. And then a couple of days in, more Celtic fans, and then but by the third day it was just swarming with Celtic fans. I need to go back to Seville because I don't have a picture in my mind because
I don't think anyone
because
was
that cathedral, I think the walls were made of green and white when they're not, because it was brilliant. It was just great, and the fans were absolutely fantastic. A great memory I've had is myself and John Mackay doing Scotland Today, as it was then, from the top of a bus, open top bus, and just swarming with Celtic fans below us, and they were chanting and singing. It was absolutely brilliant. Honestly, to this day, one of my career highlights.
Well, I think on that really positive note, thanks for your time, Jane.
My pleasure.
And we'll send you a link to the Tic Talk.
Great stuff, thank you, brilliant.
Tick tock, 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 tock.
Hello everybody, good evening and welcome to this seventh Question Time event. Thanks for coming along. Most of you who have been here will know the format. We've got a panel of leading sports journalists in the Scottish mainstream media here. If I can introduce our chair, Chris McLaughlin from the BBC, Jane Lewis from the BBC, who's attending for the first time, Richard Wilson at the end from the Herald, who is also attending for the first time, and of course old stager Sir Tom English from Scotland on Sunday. Chris got some questions. We'll just kick off in a couple of minutes, but you've been handed out raffle tickets earlier on, and at the end we'll pull a number out, and the winner gets this. The Inside the Divide, written by Richard. Now in paperback, it's about the old firm, available in all good bookstores. Isn't that right, Richard? Bargain bookstores. Bargain bookstores. So, and also just thank the Apex, Andy and his colleagues up at the top there, for their continued support. So, without further ado, libel lawyers at the ready. I'll hand you over to Chris and we can get started. First question.
Thank you. Let's kick off with a question from Gillian Robertson.
Yes. I'm just wondering, with Champions League money secured and money in for Key, do you think Celtic spent wisely in the transfer window?
Ladies first.
Spent wisely, or are you suggesting maybe they should have spent more?
Yeah, I think perhaps a lot of the fans were sort of expecting big names to be coming in for the Champions League coming up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's hard to judge if they spent wisely because, to be fair, we haven't seen the 3 players that they signed on transfer deadline. We haven't seen them yet in action, so maybe a little bit harsh to suggest that they spent unwisely because you don't know what these players are going to do. Were the fans wanting? Did they expect to see a kind of marquee signing? The likes of Robbie Keane in the past, Craig Bellamy in the past, they probably were. So I can understand why maybe some of the fans were disappointed. But I just wonder if maybe those days are gone for Celtic now. They have brought a lot of money in and they've got Champions League to think about. But I'm not sure a marquee signing was maybe the road that Neil Lennon wanted to go down. I know from speaking to him in the past, he wants to kind of bring young players in. He has specific players that he wants to bring in, be they big names or not. So it's hard to judge from that point of view. But I think, I don't think you can say whether they spent unwisely because we don't know what these players can do.
Richard, Peter Lawwell, I suppose, had a bit of a dilemma, didn't he? The SPL, everyone expects Celtic to go on and win comfortably. They reached the Champions League. Not many people expect him to kick on from this. What would his thinking be, do you think, with regard to the transfer market?
Well, I would say that they spent prudently because they could. Celtic do still have a debt that they need to pay down. They don't need to spend to win the SPL. So why not take this opportunity to make the club's finances healthier? I know, for example, that they spoke quite extensively about Del Piero inside the club. There were a lot of discussions, the coaching staff, the directors. And for 2 reasons. One, with these keynote signings that Celtic have had in the past, you would maybe argue that Craig Bellamy was the only one who made a real impact. The others, money spent on them from a great return. And also how would the arrival of somebody like Del Piero affect the dressing room, and the morale and the tightness in the squad that was set up. So if you're Peter Law, I think the decision was cut the wages, put some money in, pay a bit of debt, and you can do that for the next 3 years because there's no charge for wages. So in 3 years, arguably, the wages come back to the fair, so to say.
Tom, do the fans deserve a marquee signing?
I think the fans turning up in the numbers that deserve Champions League football, which is precisely what they get. They deserve a winning team, which is what they're getting. When Izaguirre came into the club, nobody had ever heard of him. Honduran fullback, that's got to be dodgy. It's turned out to be a fine player. Kayal wasn't a marquee player, it's turned out to be a fine player. Mikel, I'm really interested in. Signed in a 1-year loan, option to buy. Looks to have a hell of a pedigree in Spain. Looks very promising. The others I don't know about, Assad and Ambrose, going, I don't know about. But it's, as Jane and Richard were saying, I think Lowell has been sensible. I mean, he could have pushed the boat out. They have the finance to push the boat out a little bit. I think Del Piero would have been a major mistake. I think he's much better off going with younger players. I think the Celtic policy is very, very sensible, and actually very exciting because you breed your own. You get them in young, get them in cheap, and develop them. I think that's the way to go. It's the way Rangers should have done it, but probably did not.
Julie, do you question the ambition? I mean, that was the question.
No, I think I'm not convinced. Well, I'm not convinced that we have the players to do anything in the Champions League, but who we're up against anyway, I'm not convinced there was anybody that you could have brought in that would have made a huge difference to that. Got a chance against a couple of the teams, I think, probably at home. I think games against Barcelona we have to write off, and again, there's nobody we could have brought in that I think would have necessarily changed that. And with the SBL, I think we've probably got a squad there that could already win it. So yeah, I mean, I think I'd rather see the club financially stable.
Does anyone think the club should have been more ambitious?
I don't necessarily think they should be more ambitious, but when you do the maths, it looks like 15 million for the Champions League, 5 million for key, at least 20 million. And I don't know what we've spent there, but it's nothing like that. And while the supporters will come along, they do like a wee bit of excitement, so I think that's the wee reservation I have.
Let's move on. A question from Martin. Martin Ledbetter.
I don't know if Martin can say I'll ask it this way. Why are so many Celtic players injured? Is it bad luck or something to do with training techniques?
I think Tom Neil Lennon questioned at one point the surface at Lennon's
Why
they're crocked.
That's one that's gone over my head, to be honest. I know there are a list of injuries. I know Lennon has complained about the surface on occasion. It's actually a good question, Martin, wherever you are. I must direct that to Neil Lennon and his ground staff. But the honest answer is I don't know why they have a list of injuries, whether it's just freakish or not.
Neil Lennon did say he was going to have an investigation. I mean, he's strong enough. He said I'm going to investigate what's happening. So it'd be interesting to go back to him and put that point to him. What did your investigation find?
No, I mean, that would be the only one. I would to say the clubs do go through spells where they get lots of injuries, but it isn't necessarily anything you can do. In Arsenal, a series of muscle injuries at the moment, and Arsenal Gregor's talking about it every day. And I mean, sometimes it's just these things happen, but there's no underlying reason for it.
I think one of the underlying markets about the question, I think one of the underlying issues was some of the pre-season games. It was with the United States and players picking up, being warm and picking up.
They didn't do that this time.
No, I mean, Celtic's campaign.
Neil's spoken about using this pre-season as arranging this pre-season with the Champions League games in mind. We're not doing these long tours and we're off to Australia and like that. So I'm not so sure.
Right, let's move on to a cracker from Iain Monk.
Free, yes. Don't throw things at me. Is it ever justifiable for the club, for our club, for Celtic, to ban journalists from Celtic Park? And I'm specifically referring to Hugh Keevans being booted out recently. And
is he a journalist?
I just wonder what the panel think about that.
Even when you ask the panel and the room.
Well,
let's start with the panel. Hugh.
Is it ever justifiable banning journalists? Well, I'm not sure what Hugh has been saying, to be honest with you.
I think he questioned Peter Lawwell, didn't he? There was a piece about Peter Lawwell and his ambition, I think, right?
No, the language he used was begging letter.
Yeah.
In what sense?
Of a letter sent out to the season ticket holders, asking them to renew their season tickets, and I think Hugh Keevans apparently wrote an article. I've not read it, but that was a phrase that was used, a begging letter.
Well, let me tell you something about journalists being banned. We love it. We think it's great. Our sports editors love it. It gives us a nice handy back page. It makes us feel great that people are reading our stuff, they take a defence of our stuff. Utterly self-defeating from a football club to ban a journalist. Because all you do is you make him feel great about himself. Especially for something that sounds pretty trivial. Now, of course, if a guy really oversteps the mark, you have a decision to make. But I haven't seen it in 7 or 8 years. I haven't seen an example of that yet in Scottish journalism. I've seen a lot of bad journalism, but I've never seen anything that should result in a guy getting banned from a football ground. And it seems to be kind of de rigueur at the moment. Levine is doing it. He's done it as well with the Daily Record, completely without some foundation. Rangers have done it, and they kind of come and go. You know, the ban tends to last for a week or something. The Keevans one that last longer. But it's nothing is to be gained by it. Nothing.
Well, let's be honest, on our side of this, it's never going to change what you write, it's never going to change how you approach anything, and this is this exercise, as they say. And I can understand why it appeals to supporters from a professional point of view, as Tom says, it's utterly futile.
Are managers, chief executives, chairman, Jane, too precious sometimes, or to the other point?
I'm sure, we all know, I think, on this table that managers can certainly be too precious, and they can take offence to things at the drop of a hat. I think the guys are right, though. I mean, I think any kind of normal fan surely feels that they're missing out if they don't hear their manager being interviewed at the Friday press conference on Sportsound or reading the quotes in these guys' papers. And that's the kind of common link, isn't it, between the fans and the club? They want to hear from the players and the manager, and if they're being banned, then that's obviously defeating that purpose. But the BBC was banned after the Craig White expose, and I think they had egg in their face after that, because everything the BBC said, which they were up in arms about, was absolutely spot on. So
you think also, Tom, that there's a sponsorship issue here as well? I mean, the sponsors, I would imagine.
No, I don't think that. I think the sponsors tend to kind of shy away from this. They don't tend to get involved no matter what's going on. I just can't.
They might have Sky were involved.
Sorry?
They might have Sky were involved.
Maybe. But I just don't get it with football clubs banning journalists. I think it's crazy. I mean, you saw the example of the Levine one when the Daily Record, Keith Jackson was kicked out of the press conference. And the photographer took this back page picture of him through the gap in the door where the journalists were sitting. And it was a great photograph. And I guarantee you, everybody in the Record was going, "We're banned." Tremendous. Now, Levine thinks he's throwing his weight around, and, you know, that'll show them. If you actually saw how his decision was met in the office of the Record, you go, maybe this isn't hurting them after all.
Does anyone think it is justifiable? Anyone here? Why?
I've got a slightly different. What would you do, or how would you recommend chairmen react or work with you guys if you're writing stuff that they don't like?
Well, you can play, you know, everyone can play this game. So say Lawwell is upset with something at the Record. Well, he gives a story to the Sun, and he tells the Record he's done it. That's the way you play the game. If you want to try and manufacture, and it happens. It's happened for decade upon decade upon decade. And Peter Lawwell knows that, and he's done it himself. So why he's getting involved in this? I just don't know. That's it.
Yeah, I wrote something once that Peter didn't like, and phoned the desk the following day.
Once a day, is that? Or just once?
just the once so far. He had a rant on the sports editor, and that was that. He could have picked up the phone to me and done it, or he could have just picked up the phone and had a conversation. We're all big boys, we all write things, and we know that people might not like what we write, and we take responsibility for that. So I don't.
If it was something contentious, would you pick up the phone before it went to press?
Well, it depends. If I was asking a question, I would. But the piece I'm talking about was just a profile of him, so there's no need to speak to Peter. So no, you don't run things by people before you write.
do us guys sometimes feel above reproach?
Yeah, I mean, I know managers, chairmen in particular, chairmen, who take umbrage at the slightest thing. Because I think, you know, for a long time, at various times, say Rangers would have had an easy ride in a period of history from journalists. Celtic would have had an easy ride in a period of history from journalists. I think they almost come to accept that, you know, a bit of an easy ride, that there's this understanding that journalists won't lay into them. And we're now, where Rangers are getting it, Celtic have got it in the past. I think we're now in a more, I know you would scoff at this, but we're in a more honest age in the journalism in this country, where the cosy relationships of the past, they don't exist anything like they used to, that they do now. They don't exist at the moment the way they did in the 80s, the 90s. When I was in Scotland for 4 years, from 92 to 96, and the Herald's relationship with Rangers was a scandal. It was an absolute scandal. And even Mia Blowen could recognise that.
In what sense?
Oh, it was the love bombing of David Murray. It was Rangers who do no wrong. It was woe is Rangers because, you know, they're going to be so far ahead of Celtic in years to come. Where are they going to get a game? And it was the acceptance of the David Murray line. I mean, the slavish acceptance of the David Murray line. And they weren't the only ones.
Let's throw open the question.
No, as a fan, actually, Tom's probably covered it there. I think as a fan, I prefer to have journalists that felt able to criticise either team or any teams in the league. And I think now, you say things have changed, and I think that is a lot down to the internet boycott generation that has meant that journalists can sort of hide behind their cosy relationships.
Welcome to internet boycott.
Somebody's going to have to tell me who invented the phrase internet.
Sorry, yes,
yeah, I mean, it sort of encapsulates the other points that have just been mentioned, including Tom's. But you as a profession have come under some scrutiny about what has happened to Scottish football. And perhaps this is a purging of Celtic's actions, are a purging of elements that we don't want to see. We don't want to return to lapdog journalism. The Graham Spears phrase, which was escaped me, succulent lamb, etc. So the journalism as a whole has come under scrutiny.
Jane, if you were banned by chairman of the club, would it affect how you write or report on that personal club?
No, but you, as a professional, you would not want it to affect what you were saying about them, your tone of voice, how you were delivering your speech, etc. I think as a person, you would be raging inside. I'm sure if it was.
Or delighted if you listen.
Or delighted if you listen to Tom. Yeah, I mean, I know that people in the BBC are having their problems with the current national team manager at the minute, because he's like a bug on the bone that sometimes he doesn't want to admit he's wrong. But no, you wouldn't. You couldn't let it cloud your judgment. You wouldn't. It would be hard not to at times, I'm sure, because as you say, you're only human. But you have to be professional about these things. And on the other side, you wouldn't then lay it on thick as well, so that you get back in the good books. You would have to be. Well, you have to be the bigger person and try and come to some. Bring them up and say, look, let's chat this out. But no, you couldn't let it. You'd have to be professional about it. You couldn't let it cloud how you view a particular topic.
Sorry, gentleman on the back.
I mean, I think it's quite a refreshing thing that the attitudes that the chairman can be challenged, because I think for a long time they were kind of untouchable, and it didn't feel as if they had to justify what they did. So I think it's the duty of a professional journalist to actually challenge things that they do.
Yep.
Yeah, two other points, that would be great. I would also say that the vast majority of Celtic supporters are intelligent people who can make their own mind up on things. And secondly, Celtic have got a very proud tradition, and I hope a liberal tradition, and I'm not sure that it's completely squares with that tradition.
Iain?
I would agree with what Peter's just said. I think that it's, we can all have our views about certain journalists, including the people in the Parliament tonight, about what you liked. But I think it cheapens the club in a way that Keevans was asked to stay away from the club. He is a journalist. I mean, I read the article. It didn't, to me, as a supporter, seem any different from anything you can pick practically on a daily basis on the back pages. We are talking about the back pages of tabloid newspapers, and I think I just think it cheapened the club.
Okay, so we all agree journalists are great. Let's move on. Question from Tony Clark.
Yes, thanks. If they're found guilty by this week's independent commission for their legal use of BBTs, should Rangers be stripped of all titles?
Fair loose. Should Rangers be stripped of all titles found guilty? Cheating contracts.
And to who?
And given to.
And given to. Well, listen, I don't know, to be honest. If they're found guilty, that's one I've got to wait on. Should players be stripped of their titles? I mean, I know there'll be some people in this room, some people, wider range of fans who are thinking that those players cheated. When you work with players and you know them, did they know they were cheating? There's a whole host of an argument as to for that stripping titles and against stripping titles. I have no idea, to be honest. I mean, to be fair to the players, some of the players who you know on a kind of professional level, did they know they were cheating? Did they think they were cheating? I'm not sure they did. The people like David Moyes, for example, did he know he was cheating? Probably. So is it fair to take a player's medal away from him and David Murray gets away with it scot-free? I'm not sure that it is, to be honest.
That's not really answering.
No, I don't know. I think there's such a grey area of unfairness to the people who are really responsible for causing the mayhem that they have caused, and I'm not sure that I know it would target the club, the titles would be taken away from them, and the fans would be hurting with that. But you take a medal away from a player? What good is that going to do?
Tom, let's first of all clarify that Rangers have been found guilty of nothing so far. There is an investigation ongoing, but so far no verdict. If it does go against them, should they be stripped?
If they're found guilty of everything they've been accused of, the title should be stripped from. I think it's quite clear in my view. If they are guilty of making illegal payments to players, they shouldn't hold on to those titles. Now, we have tonight, Craig, Charles Green has issued another statement tonight, saying he's not turning up at this commission, doesn't recognise this commission, saying that we own the club, we own the trophies, but we're not responsible. We're not turning up at your commission. We're not responsible to the SPL because we're not in the SPL anymore. You have no jurisdiction over us. So we're having our trophies, and you can go and bugger off. That's what he's saying. It's ridiculous. I know why he's doing it. He's quite clever in a way, clever, in inverted commas, in a way, because he's telling Rangers people exactly what they want to hear, to get the money out of their pocket to buy the season tickets. He's now, I can imagine, on Follow was a meltdown. Acclamation of Charles Green, the only man standing up for this club at long last. Hooray. It's clear to me that if we always have a lot of Celtic fans.
He's got to fight this though, hasn't he? He's got to be seen to be fighting. So you're saying that he doesn't actually believe this, and he's just.
I don't know what he believes and doesn't believe. I mean, he's a mystery to me, this guy. I think he's a very tactical guy. I know he believes in the sense that he believes he must get money out of the Rangers' pockets. So he's going to do exactly anything that he can to make that happen. And we've seen him come up with some extraordinary statements, quite insulting, you might say, bigoted statements, to make that happen. But there's a problem here that a lot of Celtic people, I'd say a lot, some Celtic fans have already assumed the guilt, and they bang on at us constantly. Why haven't you condemned? Why don't you say title stripping must happen now? Rangers haven't been found guilty of anything yet. They may well be, I suspect. They probably will be. But let's hold off in this commission, Lord Smith. Let's see what he's come up with before we talk about that.
Vincent?
It depends what Rangers are found guilty of. I mean, the EBTs were all administered differently, as far as we can tell from the time that Rangers used them. So they would have to prove, if you want to strip the titles, you have to prove that Rangers gained a material advantage with the use of EBTs. And I know the argument is that they spent more money than they could, but that has to be proved. Which of the EBTs that Rangers used were administered in the wrong way? Which ones broke SFA rules, SPL rules? We don't have the slightest idea of any of that. We just get this vague notion that EBTs were used and it was a bad thing. So I'm not sure that anybody can answer that question. What any of us would need to know is to what extent was Rangers' use of EBTs in contravention of Scottish football rules. And then you can make a decision. Did Rangers gain a material advantage? We're talking here about 10 years in which Rangers won the league a couple of times, downsized massively at that time. I mean, I think there's far too many questions unanswered.
Well, let's just say, Vincent, that let's take the leap of faith and say that they are found guilty of having signed contracts, dual contracts. Should we strip?
Well, it depends. Are we talking staff here? Are we talking players? Which players? Club. To what extent?
Should the club? Well, let's just say if they're found guilty of having dual contracts, paying players, signed contracts, not through the proper channels, should the club have titles taken away?
It depends to the extent those impacted on the team.
In what sense?
Well, some of the directors were paid in that way, so does that impact on the team? I'm not sure that it does.
But if it's in the rules, the SFA rules, that all contracts must be declared to death and they haven't been declared, that's a clear breach.
But that's if those letters constituted a contract, then the tax avoidance scheme would have been null and void. So the contracts could never have constituted. Any side letter can never have constituted a contract.
Well, let's see. I mean, I think the problem here with Rangers is that they will never accept. Unless I don't know who Charles Green wants to chair this commission. Andy Gorham, maybe. Lord Nicholas Smith is compromised somehow. I don't quite get that. Seems like a stand-up guy to me, Lord Nicholas Smith. Maybe a panel Gaza. I don't know. Who's good enough for Rangers? Nobody, because they want to avoid this. Maybe they fear the worst, and they're saying, look, this has nothing to do with us now. We're a different club. We're holding on to all our trophies, but that was the old club. We're having all the trophies and the glory and the history, but the shit. Sorry, we've left that behind. Sorry.
The fans, Jane, say that some fans say they've been punished enough.
Yeah, I think you hear Rangers fans on phone-ins all the time, and I think they have a very kind of sheltered view, if you like, of what the punishments is. I mean, what the punishments are that they've been dished out. I mean, they think that the fact they're not allowed to play in Europe for 3 years is a punishment. The fact of the matter is that's not a punishment. That's a consequence of the fact that they haven't had the accounts and they have to get them in working order for 3 years before they're allowed to play in Europe and the licence, etc., etc. I think deluded, is that a word you would use? Is that unfair? I mean, as Tom says, I mean, it's the same with Charles Green. They want a key rating, and they can't have that. The club has done wrong, and I think a lot of Rangers fans are not willing to accept that the club has done wrong, and so they're not willing to accept any punishments. Or in your question there, they think they've been punished too much. And I think there's a lot of people that say that they haven't.
Surely, if Rangers throughout that period were able to attract better players because they were able to pay them more than other clubs gaining an unfair advantage, surely there isn't really an argument against taking the titles back.
If that's proven.
So you would say they should take the titles back?
If that's proven, yeah. But we're still a long way from that.
Does anyone here think that? Anyone think that they shouldn't have title strips?
Turn it in his head. How many of you would be happy to have those titles?
Well, if I have to Celtic did that, I think we should get the titles removed. Yes. And for me, and I think everybody would agree with that, it's a saga that's been going on forever and a day, and I can understand why Rangers support think teams and punished. the so-called Rangers, even though they're a new coach, one over history. I mean, something needs to be done to put an end to it. Tribunal to get on forever and a day. And the same with Scottish football, you know, people looking in on, oh, if something's not done, then it looks really bad if it's proved that Rangers have actually done something wrong.
We need to get
to be proved what they've actually done.
Exactly.
It's cloak and dagger stuff.
But we need to get to the end of the line on this. We need to know once and for all what happened, when it happened, how it happened, whether it was illegal or not. I've heard, comments from some people saying Rangers are being punished enough. They're in the third division now. All the best players have left. They're humiliated. Let's just leave them alone. But no, we need to find this. And Rangers, I would be called a Rangers hater for saying that. White Rangers fans. I'm not. I want to know what happened here. I think football needs to know what happened here. It may be that nothing happened here.
It's messy though, isn't it? I mean, where do you draw the line? I mean, do the Celtic get the titles back? European football?
My preference, I don't know. To be honest, I don't care who gets the titles. That's my honest opinion. I don't care. I wouldn't be campaigning for Celtic to get those titles.
Carol Lewis got awarded the gold medal when Ben Johnson cheated.
Yeah, I know. That's fine. There's lots of those precedents.
That's a bit more cut and dry though, isn't it? Is it not?
We don't know yet. If guilty, you're guilty. You're not a wee bit guilty.
Let me finish. I don't really care about the titles. If it's proven beyond any doubt whatsoever that they did all this stuff, take the titles from them. Should Celtic get them? I would say no. My personal view would be no. Leave that season blank. No champions. It's a reminder of what happened.
I'd agree.
I read one of the broadsheets over the weekend. If they are found guilty for stripping the titles is only one of 12 possible punishments. What are they? 18.
What ranges from everything from a slap on the wrist, fines, to points. There's all sorts of things.
Expulsion.
Well, just the other thing I was going to say was the Matt Daly's documentary on this whole issue, which I think was probably the first time where the EBT issue was explained in layman's terms for the fans. There's a lot of blogs on the internet, but to me that was, as a layperson, just looking at that, this was wrongdoing on an industrial scale over a long period, and it was a very deliberate attempt to break the rules, break the and gain an advantage. And I think it would be unthinkable for them not to have the tax stripped if they're found guilty.
Can I ask you, sorry, who do you blame for the EBT fiasco, if you like? Is there one person to blame, the person that kind of instigated it? Or?
Well, clearly it took, these alleged offences took place under the watch of David Murray. I think that's an individual that, even Rangers fans now see as somebody that has effectively destroyed the club and has dragged the club into the gutter and has humiliated the club. I don't know what's around the corner for him, but he's clearly the bad guy of this, I would have thought.
But that's the kind of point I was trying to make earlier to yourself, was that, in a sense, is David Murray not getting away scot-free, because you indicated that there might be punishments around the corner, but if titles are taken away from Rangers, is he going to care?
Yeah, well
it's a corporate responsibility.
It's a club's responsibility. I think in terms of the rules that are broken, they're rules of the governing bodies. They're not for an individual, as far as I understand. So
what are you doing to prevent it happening again?
Let's have one quick question.
Just on Jane's point there about whether the players should be punished. At the end of the day, if the management at whatever level, which is responsible for the club, has committed the offence, then we'd say the club should be punished as a whole. And in terms of titles being removed, well, titles may be removed from clubs, maybe titles could be removed from individuals as well.
Okay, let's move on. Investigation continues. That up here from Brian Colley.
That's me. I think Ian's changed my question slightly. He's tried to be nice to you all.
Well, I have to do that sometimes.
You've taken the swearing out anyway, thankfully. On the assumption that the internet ban pops up staged a lot of the mainstream media uncovering the stories that led to the demise of Rangers. Have you guys learned anything from that? And Richard, I know you've been involved quite heavily, Tom as well. I've not read so much of you, Jane, on it. And Brian, you've had a bit of a mare on it. It's Chris. And you. Brian had a mare as well. No.
Yeah, Brian's had a mare, I've been fine.
Ah, you've been great. You've been fantastic. Have you guys learned anything? Because I'm not seeing... Tom, when you touched on Charles Green there, it's the first I'm really hearing about... who's behind him? Who are the investors? This share issue, is there any... can the same thing happen again?
Let's first of all take the issue. Do you, first of all, Tom, feel upstaged by the internet handbook?
No, I'm not. Well, first of all, I would never call it internet handbook.
Tom, we are now proud of the title. Don't take it away from us.
Therefore, not to call it internet. There is this thing there amongst certainly fans out in forums and stuff that it's the mainstream media against the internet vampires. You know, it's them and us. I don't see it as them and us. More and more, you know, we are becoming closer because we're all doing blogs, we're all doing Twitter. The social media side of it get closer and closer all the time, and that digital side of it is only going to get closer because as our circulations fall, we're going to be moving towards digital a lot, right? And very quickly. So, have we learned anything? You touched on Charles Green. It depends on the newspapers you read. You were talking about having read about Charles Green. This man has written brilliantly about Charles Green. Do you read the Herald?
No, I don't.
There you go. He's written brilliantly about Charles Green. Written brilliantly about Charles Green for months and months. He's revealed a lot. Now, when I hear people online say, nobody's ever written about Charles Green, nobody's ever written about White, nobody's written about Murray, it depends on the newspapers you read. If you're reading the Record and the Sun, you're not reading about it. If you're reading the Herald, the Scotsman, some other newspapers, you probably are reading about it.
I read a lot online.
Usually the one not break, the tax law, was it?
Yeah, well, I know 3 people who claim to have broken the tax law. Right, 3 of them. Who actually broke it, I don't know. 2 bloggers claim to have broken it, and the News of the World also claim to have. The Evening Times. Darryl. Yeah, Darryl. Darryl has broken it, to be honest with you. No question, bloggers have done some great stuff. They've also done some horrific stuff. And if we wrote it, we'd be libeled. We'd be libeled. So let's not look at it. We're rubbish, and they're great, because it's nowhere near as black and white.
Jane, what have you learned anything?
Yeah, I mean, as Tom said, I think social media is grown over the last, 2 years. You know, it's as new as that, if you like. Twitter is a brilliant tool. It can be absolutely fantastic, but it also can be very, very dangerous as well. And I'm not even really sure what an internet vampire is, to be honest. I don't know if you're talking about online journalists or if you're talking about, you know, an ordinary fan who happens to post a comment up on Twitter. I mean, I don't know.
Well, to give you an example, when that phrase was raised, it was in relation to Rangers tax case blog, who was called an internet vampire. And that guy, whoever he is, has.
A journalist, or do we know?
He's anonymous. Right. But he upstaged the whole of Scottish media in his investigative work that he was doing around the Rangers tax case.
I think it's interesting because the first time I read that blog, the first thing that pops into your head as a journalist, if you read something in the media, can I trust that source of information? Yeah. If an anonymous blog is on the internet, where do you go to begin to trust that? What happened with that tax case blog was that whoever that was had access to documents, whatever information, and had the expertise to analyse it and write about it and put it out there. You can't just read something on the internet and then put it in paper. You have to have you have to be sure that that information can be corroborated, that it's true, that it's right. And I think over time that blog gained credibility because clearly what that person was writing turned out to be right. You can't just go onto the internet and pick stuff up off a website.
No one's saying that, Richard, with all due respect.
Well, yeah,
but we're asking if that That guy was an amateur. You guys are professionals.
What I'm saying is what we've learned is learning how to trust the sources that we find on the internet and where to go to corroborate that information. I don't think anybody in our industry would ever dismissed it, but you have to, you had to, well, maybe some people do. But from my point of view, I used to read it, and what I always thought was, can I trust what this person is saying? Because that site also very quickly became, certainly in the comments section, not to the same extent as some others, but an anti-Rangers conversation was constantly being held. Again, not to the extent, I can see the face of it, not to the extent that upper sites are. But there you've got an anonymous blog telling information that we can't get access to. We can't go to the tax office and say, corroborate what that person is saying, and all the comments are pretty much anti-Rangers. And so it takes time for that stuff to filter through.
But from what I could see, you actively tried to argue against the points that were made, and a lot of, sorry, not you specifically, in general, the Scottish media, until when.
We don't sit here and speak.
I wouldn't want to get into specifics.
Argued against?
Any of those talk-in shows that you would hear on the radio of the evening. You were on Newsnight as well, Richard, and a lot. Scotland Tonight, when it was journalists being interviewed, a lot of the stuff that was being written by Rangers Tax Case was trying to be rubbished. I don't have specifics, but generally that was how I felt.
Yeah, I think more the issue was that this stuff at the time was absolute dynamite, and I think amongst a lot of the Celtic fans, there just seemed to be a lack of initiative for mainstream media to go after it, apart from guys like maybe Mark Daly. I think my personal feeling was that stuff on there is dynamite. I'd be trying to find out how do I corroborate that. I would be going after that. But we just felt, I felt, as if there was a lack of initiative to go after it.
But you see, here's the problem, right? That you feel that way, and that's the biggest fact, right? We have written stuff that you have never read. Okay? You've never read. Constantly, every bloody week on Twitter, I've been accosted by people saying, how come you've never written that? That's it. I wrote it months ago. Oh, all right, did you? Yeah, here's the thing. Oh, fair play, sorry about that. You know, it happens constantly. Because you don't read the stuff that we write, how do you know what we're saying?
Is it, Jane, is it a lazy assumption by fans? Do fans in some way take some delight out of digging up the MSN?
I wouldn't want to say they take delight in it. I think there's, as Tom said, there's a huge misunderstanding there, because you're saying that, I mean, you go on to Rangers Tax Case, you say, right, he's saying that, she's saying that, we don't know who it is.
Yep.
Let's try and chase it. I don't think anyone in their right mind, when they read something dynamite, as you put it, they don't try and stand it up or they don't chase it. But you can't just go out there and say, right, he's saying that, let's just put it out. You need to stand it up. And it doesn't just take 5 minutes to stand something up. You need to call maybe a dozen people to get to the bottom of it, and then after that dozen people, you then have to spend another week trying to bash the phones and get to a source that you absolutely trust, that you would then put out. It takes time.
And Richard, Rangers Tax Case is not accountable to it.
Yeah.
No, and I can understand why, if their source of information would be compromising to their source, if their identity was known. There's nothing wrong with being anonymous, but it's just the point that James repeated. You can't just take. I mean, imagine I went to my editor and said, "Yeah, I've got a story. Where'd you get it from? I read it on the internet." I mean, you'd laugh me out.
I don't think that's what we're saying. I think we're actually saying this is dynamite. I would be actually out there. I would be making calls.
Yeah, but how do you know we haven't? How do you know we haven't done that? I think every one of us will have been.
Well, that's why I asked, have you?
All the serious newspapers in Scotland would have tried.
HMRC has a policy of not discussing these matters.
But you were, sorry, and I say you, I don't mean you specifically, Richard, but generally, there was so many stories about deals being done with HMRC, or headlines, and I have to say none of the publications that you guys work for, but more the red tops of where Craig White's done a deal with HMRC. How could that story be stood up?
I think our industry has learned. I think all of us would probably be less inclined to take at face value what we're told by certain sources.
Yeah.
Whereas in the past, you might, an element of trust is built up between you and a PR source with a certain person, and in the past, we would believe what that person said, because if they weren't telling us the truth, that would reflect badly on them. and they would never be able to briefly do the things that they do. I think the Craig White thing was an obvious example of it, when his PR people were briefing that he was some kind of multi-millionaire or whatever. Some people went to print with it, and it turned out utter nonsense. Now that person, those PR people now have no credibility and probably can't work in that industry again. But I don't think anyone's going to take all that kind of stuff at face value anymore.
And generally,
back to your Charles Green point. I mean, think of the right that guy had to try and get in through the door in the first place. He was getting battered on all sides from various different publications, our own and myself included. And I continue to be sceptical about Charles and everything he's doing in Rangers.
Tom, do you question? Sorry, Richard. Tom, do you question your sources more now because of what's happened in Egypt? Where we Egypt?
I think everyone, to an extent, will look back and think, could have gone harder here, could have pulled a bit, closer there. Absolutely, but that's not just in Rangers. That's in everything. That's in every story I cover. I think. Have I written the perfect story? No, never. 20 years, never done it. And what Richard's saying is right. I mean, there's another thing. I mean, I interviewed Craig White a number of times. I said on this get together last time, that I wanted to get the tapes, because I had all sorts of Celtic people said, you went soft today, lapdog, Murray, chocolate lamb, all that stuff. And I went to the Scotsman digital department. I said, can we get? I have the transcripts of the tapes, ours. Can we put them online so people can just listen to them? And they said, great idea. Excellent, that'd be great. A lot of traffic. They said, right, here you go. Send them on. They rang up and said, we can't put them online. I said, why not? It says, because your swearing is appalling. I have to say, I do swear a lot. It's part of my DNA. But if you heard the tapes, you would have heard me absolutely accosting him, calling him a liar. On the ticketless thing, I said, Craig, you told me on such and such a date that you hadn't used the ticketless money to buy the club. We now know that was a lie. You were lying to me. No, I wasn't lying. You were effing lying to me. And he, absolutely unembarrassable, sat there and said, I was not lying to you. Now,
because he only paid £1 for the club.
When you get told barefaced lies and you cannot break him down, and then you're told, well, you never asked him the questions. Never asked him the questions. I practically punched him in the face. You know what I mean? But that's what you're meant with. You do your best to,
And what about David Murray?
Do things differently now.
What about David Murray and all of this? I've not seen the massive headlines in terms of what he's done and how he's going to be investigated moving forward.
As Tom said, I've written about Murray's culpability and all of this. I mean, there seems to be a generation of Celtic fans who are a problem with Murray, and I can understand why. And you're looking for the same kind of coverage in reverse that you got in the earlier days. I mean, that's just not going to happen. But there's been plenty of people criticised him for what he did and the way he ran the club. And go back to an earlier question about EBTs. Rangers paid a six-figure fee to Murray International for the advice about how to use EBTs, how to implement them, tax advice, legal advice. I mean, David Murray is inextricably linked to all of this. But you just have to go looking to find. I mean, you're not going to find it in the record. You're probably not going to find it.
Let's take a final question.
It's a comment really more than anything, and I think one of the things that kind of sticks in a lot of football fans' throats, not about the people on the panel tonight, but it's the way that some journalists in Scotland now take credit for breaking the EBT story or breaking the ticket story when it was on the internet a year in advance, and was, to be honest, was common knowledge amongst many football fans, and yet I'll name names. Jim Traynor still says he broke that story.
Well, Jim's not here to defend
And you're not going to defend.
Iain, yep. Hold on. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, great, thank you, last one.
Okay, folks, we've gone through the vote up there. Can I just thank the panel, Richard, Tom, Chris, and Jane. Thank you very much for coming along. It's fantastic. Really enjoyed that.
BJ Mack here, and I'm just after finishing the Q&A session with the journalists and the Scottish Civil Service CSC, and with me a big man walked into the room and I recognise him straight away is Kingo from the Kano Foundation. How are you doing, Kingo?
I'm very well, thanks, BJ.
And what did you think about how tonight went and the Q&A session?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was good stuff. I think probably the journalists, I mean, they're always guarded because, like yourself, are recording everything. So I think they've got to be careful what they say in any case. I think probably they're a bit more upfront and honest than they are on radio shows and things like that. I think you're more likely to get an honest answer. They maybe play to the audience a wee bit at times. They know their audience here, and they're Celtic supporters, but generally speaking, I think it went pretty well. And
you won the raffle, and so tonight on eBay there's going to be a book written by Richard Wilson, Inside the Divide. Is that correct? What's your eBay address? You want to plug it now?
No,
what's the bid starting at? Is it a penny?
I don't know if I could put it on as new or used, but I've certainly got it signed, so I guess if somebody's a big Richard Wilson for the Herald fan, get in touch and make me an offer. I would think I might be able to read that in the night anyway. It'll be second hand by then.
Good man. And what do you think the Champions League draw? Moving on to that, are you quite happy?
I think overall, I think it's as good as you can expect looking at the other groups. I was probably a wee bit disappointed getting the double-header against Barcelona in the middle. I think if you're going to get Barca and maybe try and take something from you, maybe what in the last game when
I was of the same
they're already through. If you maybe get a big game at the weekend on the Saturday, and they maybe send half a team over, and I mean certainly Barcelona's half a team is probably still fairly decent, but it gives you that outside
chance.
The
same token, I can also understand because I thought the exact same as you, and I made the same point to someone on our bus, and they said, well, actually we played Spartak the last game, and they're in their winter break at that point, so they've not been playing for a few weeks, so it's maybe there's never a right answer, is there? We'll always
there's not. I mean,
Celtic fans will always pick something.
But I think you've got two games against Barcelona, and both games are probably going to matter to them to win
for qualification,
and then they'll ease off in the last two games if they get the results they need.
So it'll be interesting times ahead, but you're looking well anyway, big man. It's good to see you tonight. Hail, hail.
Right, hail, hail.
Tic Talk, talk, talk.
Well, Vincenzo, sir, that's us finished. What was your thoughts in the evening?
I thoroughly enjoyed it, actually. It was quite a good panel. As you said to me on the way back here to record, too much talk about Scotland, but anyway.
We'll get Richard maybe to get that out, hopefully. So the folk will be listening to us now saying, they didn't even mention Scotland.
Aye, so take the Scotland question out. I think your question certainly got us going. And it was quite interesting.
It was a good one, wasn't it?
It was quite interesting how reluctant the panel were, other than maybe Tom English, to actually say, "Yep, titles should be stripped," and actually give him his due eventually.
With a wee bit of cajoling.
From my good self.
Assistance.
I think Richard Wilson saw the light as well, and actually, once we explained it to him, and to be fair, he has actually written a fair amount about it. However, once we put the facts in front of him, and once we said, if this was the case, if this is what actually turns out and transpires, should titles be stripped? And that's why I went back to him again, and eventually he said yes. So I was quite surprised at it.
But we were talking earlier on when we were having our tea and crumbs. I'm going to call it. What about these scones?
So the scones and tea that cost us about cost you about, but I'd already paid your part.
Tea and scones cost me.
Cost you about 7-8 quid. Were the smallest scones we've ever come across.
When we arrived, I had my glasses off and I couldn't see them. I thought you'd sat down an empty plate.
I thought they were mine and yours were still to come. So we put our butter and jam on them.
Aye. We just need to let the listeners know Vincent Mooney does not know the difference between butter and clotted cream.
Yeah.
It was a bit of disappointment, the scones.
It was very disappointing, actually. Tea was nice. Scones were minuscule.
It was a nice strong tea, that.
It was a lovely tea.
It was quite flagrant as well.
It was a lovely tea. And I couldn't think MD.
Fragrant?
Aye.
That's my speech impediment again.
I couldn't think of MD I would more like to spend that cup of tea with. as well.
That's
So-
us at 2 dates in a week. That was us, mate. We shared dinner Saturday night. And, all in all, a good night though.
Good night. A big thank you to Iain Monk and the Scottish Civil Service Celtic Supporters Club.
You're doing well. We'll need to have a word with him about the question list, but
Well,
we'll need to get more space on that.
He knocked off my question. I had a question at the Champions League. But anyway, it's because yours went on too long, but it was the meaty question.
Aye.
That
You
everybody
need to get in there.
Aye. So I suspect he'll certainly have more of these. So I think the intrepid reporters will be there.
Yes.
BJ Mack and Vincenzo, sir, will be there.
Right, so it's good night from
Vincenzo, sir.
And BJ Mack. Hail, hail.
Hail, hail.
Tic Talk, talk, talk.
Hello, it's Richard here again. As I mentioned at the very start of the podcast, that's us now finished all of the kind of main topics around, Celtic and the world that the majority of our listeners follow. So for the rest of it, from this point onwards, it's the piece that we have cut out and put back in again at the very end that covers all the questions round about the Scottish national team and Scottish football at a higher generic level. So if that's something that you fancy listening on to, then by all means do so, and then that will be the very end of this podcast. So we'll be back to our normal Tic Talk productions of panel talk shows and all things Celtic, etc. Fairly soon. But until then, thanks a million to our intrepid reporters, Brian and Vincent, for all the work that they've done on recording this CSC event and letting us sharing it out to the wider Celtic family. And thanks to the guys through at the Scottish Civil Service CSC for inviting us through and allowing the Carluke Shamrock boys to record this and put it out as a special edition Tic Talk show. And until the next time on Tic Talk, hail hail.
Tic Talk, 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 talk.
Question from Nigel Graham. Thank you. Should Scottish football journalists be pressing the SFA to do more to improve the game in Scotland? Jane, why are you not pressing the SFA?
No, I feel a bit guilty. Are you talking about grassroots? Are you just talking about what aspect of the game you're talking about?
I'm 47 years of age, and when Scotland was reasonably okay to where we are now, there's police report, there's this and that. Let's look at Red over there, they're doing really brilliantly well, but
yeah,
I don't see the...
I'm not sure it's up to Scottish football journalists to be pressing the SFA to do the best for Scottish football. I think the SFA should want to do the best for Scottish football, and
if they're not, what do journalists do?
Well, I mean, I think questions are asked about the kind of state of the game, the Henry McLeish report. Why was it not done earlier? Why are you not implementing things? I think questions are continually asked. I mean, I'm sure there were questions asked today of Craig. I wasn't working today to get out of it, but I'm sure questions were asked about, say, Craig Levine today. The pressure he's feeling under. You say you've got an improved team, prove it, kind of idea. But I mean, I think there's only so far that journalists can do. I mean, yeah, we can all write articles. Then we'll be banned by the national team manager, which is not brilliant. But you can all write articles and you can put your points over, and hopefully, if the points are pertinent enough, the SFA may pick up on them. But I think it's the SFA's main responsibility to look after the game here.
Richard, is it incumbent upon us to press the SFA to change the game?
Yes, it is. And I think we have. I mean, it's obviously in the football industry that we've written these pieces time and time again about the state of Scottish football. I mean, I would argue that Scottish football is probably about a generation behind most other countries in Europe in terms of our appreciation of technique and touch and how we train our young players and how we train our coaches. And that's scandalous when you think that we've been talking about this kind of thing for as long as I've been in this business, more than 10 years. I think it's a little bit different now because Mark Potter, the Scottish FA, has strong ideas about how we train people, and his job as performance director, I think, will have an impact. But it's also, I would argue, it's incumbent on supporters, because how many fans at a game just want to see the ball lumped into the box, just want to see a certain direct type of game, they want to see the thunder, they want to see the raised temperature of the Scottish football match, where sometimes we need to be a bit more sophisticated than that. I heard somebody in the crowd on Saturday shouting, "Change it to 4-4-2, as though that's the answer to everything. You might go, that's a regressive step. So it's not just down to us, but I would say that we do press the SFA, but has enough ever been done? I don't think it has been.
Nigel, are you talking about the grassroots, or are you talking about the national team?
Well, I think I'm looking at the national team. will be good if the grassroots are better. It's clear from the weekend or abysmal, shocking, Craig Levy's still played exactly the same way. He's always been scared to attack because we're worried of the ability of other teams. I was sitting watching it, I thought, I'd rather read a book. This is shocking. And it's like, well, what do you need to do as journalists? What do you need to do to press this? I think fans, all the people I speak to, want an exciting game, don't want warming up the ball. That's not my understanding, certainly not my understanding of Celtic fan. What I want to see Celtics play, I certainly don't want to see Scotland play in a different way. So it's about, I'm seeing occasional conversations, I'm seeing occasional pushing the police report, it's all there, and then we listen to Radio Scotland the weekend, Jim Traynor talking, oh yeah, he's okay. It's half around the surface. It's like too scared to actually say, sorry, this is not working, we need to actually do something. Why aren't we actually doing something a bit more plausible?
I think
I'm not getting that from the journalists.
I think they are. I think the reason maybe the journalists aren't laying into the SFA for this one is because we can see what they're trying to do. Stuart Regan, whatever you think about him, I think he does have his heart. I think he's committed to this. I think he's committed to Vota. I think he's committed to improving the SFA, the grassroots of it. I think when he came in, he was shocked at the state of the organisation at all levels, development of the game particularly. And I think he's doing some good stuff. I really do. And I think that's.
The time, haven't reached that time.
Oh yeah,
you
won't see this. I mean, you won't see this for years. The hoped for improvement, you won't see it because Scotland for 20 years maybe has completely lived on the back of we're always qualified. We qualify because that's what Scotland do, and there was a total neglect of the development of the game.
It's not just Scotland either, by the way. It's England. British football has never embraced, has never learned the same way that nations have learned from each other. Different techniques, different styles, different approaches. We've always been closed off in this country for lots of different reasons. Because we've never tapped into that knowledge that exists in the world. So that's why we're so far behind.
Let's take a question in the back here.
No, sorry, I can see without fear or favour as the oldest person in the room. I can remember the 1962 playoff of the World Cup final. If anyone remembers that Brazil beat Czechoslovakia 3-1, we lost 4-2 after extra time in Brussels with the beating team of Czechoslovakia. The players like White, George, Gore, etc. Now, if you remember the early Walker report, the big Terry Walker, the movement of people that were begging, they said, what has happened to this? Why don't people pursue this? It's as if, the continental, as if we're not part of Europe, caught up and overtaken us. Why this insular attitude? And I would agree, why don't more journalists say, what has happened? Okay, kids can't play in the street anymore, it's not safe, but other nations build proper facilities. Holland, Norway, etc. I remember we used to beat Norway Hansen.
Nigel, let me turn it back on you and say, you have a week in Tom's shoes as a sports journalist. What the questions you would ask, what would you do?
Put your feet up.
Tom does that.
Well, I suppose that's very difficult because I'm not a journalist. And, I suppose I would be asked the question now, okay, we've got this new guy in, what's he actually doing? We understand and appreciate it's going to take a period of time for football to improve. It took, the Dutch a bit of time to take the Spanish a bit of time to do that. What's actually happening? What's the progress that's actually happening? Because I don't see it. So it's more about what's happening in the grassroots. Where are we going to actually see these people?
I think, personally speaking, I did a story on the introduction of the regional schools. The Mark Walter are very heavily behind this new performance schools, which are dotted around the 6 or 7 regions in Scotland. I think that's a very exciting aspect of and maybe think 2020s when we're going to see the fruits of this labour, if you like. And we have covered that, and I think it's going to take time. I think if you're impatient and you're a Scotland fan, you're in a no-win situation because it's going to take a lot of time. But I think there are some things to get excited about. What Regan's trying to do, as Tom said.
When you look at, I know we're talking about the national team and bad result again. it's easy to throw the hands up in the air and say, Scotland, we're going to up again. We're no good, players aren't good enough. I think that's too simplistic an analysis of the Levine era, and it's too simplistic analysis of the George Burley era. I think the players are all right.
I think we've got good players. I think
Management's the problem.
at the moment has got the attitude that we haven't got good players. We're scared to use
dynamic players. No, he doesn't. He has an attitude that these players are fantastic. They're world beaters.
But he doesn't know how to use them, and he also puts Kate Miller.
I'll tell you what, let's move on to this. We've got a question that will follow nicely from Andrew Robinson.
Yeah, I mean, will Craig Levein lead the national team to World Cup finals in Brazil?
Jane, are we going to review?
Probably not, I would suggest, and that pains me to say that as a football fan and a pessimist. I know, well, okay, I was going to ask you, but we're probably not allowed to, are we? Yeah. It's not, listen, I think Craig Levein has a lot of positive attributes to bring to the table in terms of being a manager. I think on Saturday it was desperately disappointing. It's something that's going to be quite hard to recover from. I think from his point of view, continuing to be the manager of Scotland, we should have won it. We certainly, I think, had the players to win it, although I think if you look at the Serbia defence, they were quite impressive actually. They're on paper. Tuesday, I think, will be quite telling in terms of whether we're going to have a chance to make it, and probably as to whether Craig Levein is going to be the man to lead us on. And it pains me to say that. I want Scotland to go to a World Cup. I want to be part of, the carnival that we kind of see on the telly and what have you. But right now, I'm not a positive lady when it comes to that.
Keep the former to last, Richard.
I would say there's not a chance of Craig taking us to Brazil. I mean, it's a difficult group. There's some good teams in it, but we shouldn't be scared of Serbia or Wales. And I think Craig had a campaign. He has lessons to learn from that campaign. I don't think he's learned them. He was too cautious on Saturday, too defensive, too scared about what Serbia might do. This is a team that hadn't scored in 4 internationals, and Craig was paranoid about conceding a goal. Same thing happened against the Czech Republic, a very weak and eager Czech Republic side. We should have beaten them on 2 occasions. We didn't even try to beat them on those 2 occasions, I don't think. And Craig employed the same tactics again on Saturday. He's too cautious, and I think that's what's going to hold him back. And he's not going to change as a manager now.
Tom, I asked Craig Levein the question after the game. In hindsight, looking back, would you maybe have been a little bit more adventurous? And his reply was, if that was the case, and I'd been more adventurous, we'd be standing here talking about defeat. Is that the right attitude?
Craig Levein, I'm not a fan of Craig Levein. For all the reasons Richard has outlined. I think the question was, will he lead Scotland to Rio? I would rephrase the question, will he lead Scotland to Wales in October? Because I really worry about tomorrow night. He's a manager who keeps talking up his players. He keeps banging on about this huge improvement that he sees, that nobody else sees. Scotland now are ranked 1 place lower in the world rankings than we took over. They've won 3 competitive matches out of the 9. The only teams that Craig Levein has beaten in a competitive match are Liechtenstein and Lithuania, and yet we're told constantly that these players are fantastic, the management is great, everyone's happy, we're on the road to Rio, blah, blah, blah.
You don't see any improvements at all?
None. I don't see a single improvement. I see players that he's brought in, decent players, they're not playing for him. They're all, I mean, Craig, from what I can gather, Craig's a measure of a player. Is if he'll turn up, behave himself, try hard, then he's a good pro and wants to play for Scotland. If he's a little bit flighty, a little bit too much lip, Craig wants him out. Doesn't want anything to do with him. I don't think he's a manager. Certainly not at an international level. I think the problem is that he's in with the bricks of the SFA. He's not just national team manager. He's almost like a de facto deputy chief executive because he's so close to Stuart Regan. And I think it's going to end badly eventually for Craig because he's just too stuck in his ways.
So yeah, back to
just a quick follow-up. I mean, sorry. I mean, the issue is whether or not you have a kind of structural problem in Scottish football, and you could get in, would Jose Mourinho take us to Brazil, or do we just not have the quality players? But I think there are. I personally don't rate Craig Levein. I think his issues around Stephen Fletcher, around players like Chris Commons, have just fatally undermined him. And like you guys, I can't see him. I can see. James said Scotland fans need to be patient and wait for improvement. I think our media will turn on Craig Levein pretty quickly if the Macedonia game goes badly. Then I'm not sure whether or not the SFA can afford to sack him.
Do you know, have the media already turned on Craig Levein?
Well, I don't think the media are. I don't think they've turned on him as much or as easily and as quickly as they turned on the likes of Bertie Vokes or George Burley. I forgot his second name. But I don't think there are many fans in the media of Craig Levein. I think there probably are around when he was at Dundee United. He did a fairly decent job, and there are probably some journalists who hail from that neck of the woods who would see what he's trying to do there. But I mean, when you say there, I said be patient. I'm talking about the grassroots level. I understand that we want to be qualifying for a World Cup, and we should be. We're as good as countries who have been doing that. But I think it's going to be very interesting to see if we don't get a result, and I mean by that a win tomorrow night. I think you will see media organisations, newspapers, phone-ins. You heard on Saturday we just got on the phone, and the nice were out. So the fans, I think, have already turned against. I'm not even sure they were ever with them, to be perfectly honest. Was maybe not the right thing, but I think on Tuesday night, if we don't win, I think newspapers and I think radio stations and live TV stations will not be soft on Craig Levein. Put it that way.
Yep, of course.
I was just wondering if it does go badly on Tuesday night, Levein's out, just who's next? I mean, who?
It's a good point, isn't it? That's what I mean. They're not exactly. They're not lining up, or are they?
No, I don't think they are lining up. I mean, I think Gordon would carry the popular vote. In any spell, Middlesbrough wasn't that great, and Gordon can be as spiky and stubborn character as Craig Levein is, so you only have to ask Aidan McGee about that. So I don't know. I don't think there would be a huge amount of candidates. We might the others. I think we've got a decent team. We've got a great strength and depth at the back, but we were better than we played on Saturday, and that's the mark of a manager. And like I said before, I don't think Craig's learned the lessons. But if there's nobody to replace him, that makes Stuart's decision a little bit easier.
Tom, how would your approach have differed on Saturday? What would you have done?
I'd have recognised, I think, that Kelly Miller is playing poorly, in a poor club, in a poor league, and playing. I'd have gone with Jordan Rhodes, no question. I'd have had Chris Commons in the squad.
Rhodes on his own?
I'd have been tempted to go with two up front. Very tempted to go with two up front.
Who would?
I like Jamie Mackey. I think he's itching for a chance to play through the middle as opposed to out wide. I think he looked good when he came on. He's playing at a very good level, and he's playing very confidently at a very good level in England. I would have been tempted to put him in. But as Richard said, the whole attitude with Levein on Saturday, just like every other day, is try not to lose. Try not to lose, and a point would be decent. So, no harm done. A point.
To be fair, Craig Brown deployed that approach, didn't he? He got to the World Cup.
Yeah, well, yeah. Listen, he had better players. I mean, let's face it. He had better players and he got better results. Now, if Craig Levein won the match on Saturday, I'd be quiet. If he gets off to Scotland after a good start, if he plays nobody up front, he gets a break.
Any Levein fans here? Anyone's going to stick up for Craig Levein?
Well, to be fair to Craig Levein, I'm not a fan at all, but I think he's his own worst enemy because he slandered himself by, for want of a better word, the S-men. Peter Houston's got a full-time job. Kenny Black, I think he'll hear Jimmy Elgate. His chief scout was somebody called Mick Oliver, I think was a journeyman player. He really needs some assistance, so it took him about 5 minutes to do a substitution for James Forrester. And there's a confab with the touchline. When the game was crying out for an instant impact, an impact stopped somebody like James Forrest. Well, why did it take 5 minutes for it to happen? Because I think he slaves himself by yes men.
Well, he gave Jordan Rhodes 11 minutes, 11 minutes. Now, this is a young kid who needs 25, 30 minutes, 10 minutes to get his head sorted out for coming onto an environment like that. Just to give him a chance, but he gives him 11 minutes. I mean, you've got no chance. Almost a token substitution.
Yeah, I mean, basically we lost 2 points at home to a team that will not finish first or second in that section.
Anyone here think we will go to Rio? With or without it?
No. One of the problems that Craig's thinking is that 4 points from the first 2 games, that'll do. That's a decent start. Well, it's not a decent start. He railed against this idea that 6 points out of 6 was a must. I would say 9 points out of 9 was a must. Because Scotland are going to drop points on the road. They're not a team, like, say if Spain lost their first game, you wouldn't be too worried, because Spain can kill everybody else in the group when they get their act together. Scotland can't do that. Are Scotland going to go to Belgium and win? Doubtful. Are they going to go to Croatia and win? Doubtful. They can't make up these points. They need to get all the points they can at home. But I mean, again, on Saturday night, I said to Craig afterwards, I said, Craig, you're already playing catch-up. And he gave me the death stare. He gave me the death stare. I couldn't understand what I was talking about. And I just think, it's just like his head isn't in the right place.
I think when you heard, Tom's right, when you heard his pre-match presser on whenever it was, it might even when the score was announced, when he said 4 points was acceptable, I think that set alarm bells ringing.
I think Peter Houston said it, wasn't it?
Well, Peter, I think Houston did say it, but I think Craig Levine said it, and subsequent ones. I think alarm bells, as they were ringing from the onset.
Let's leave Craig Levine alone for
one last point. Not to labour the point. But what we're hearing today and yesterday from a succession of Scotland players, incredibly, and this comes directly from Levine, is that a draw tomorrow night wouldn't be a disaster. So, I think that's it.
But they're actually saying about that they don't actually believe it.
But someone is telling them
he's going to qualify out. Because the language and the way that we're talking, the way that we play, is we're not really going to do it. Let's not embarrass ourselves and get really destroyed.
Well, let's move on, let's leave them alone.
Tic Talk, 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 talk.
The thing I want to see the most is the Glasgow Celtic score. I've been to Munich, been to Paris and Berlin. I watched injustice fall upon you in Turin, and I've shared the pain and glory with the friends that I have made as I dance from place to place in green and white on a worldwide tin parade.